You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg, joined by my co-host Leon. Let's do this! Yes, so welcome to Ace Comicals, episode number 99. It's just me and Leon today.
Yeah.
And so what sort of stuff have I been consuming over the past few weeks? Well, it will surprise nobody that because we're like week 3 of October, and you're probably sick of me saying the word Halloween now.
It's not over.
Yeah, it's not over yet. It will surprise nobody. The stuff that I've been into and watching. I think you've probably been watching some of the same stuff, haven't you? Because there's that Bly Manor thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Haunting of Bly Manor, which is basically the second. It's like the follow-up to the Haunting of Hill House, and they're kind of like doing this anthology horror thing where it's like completely different story, but still a horror story, still
Like same crew, a bunch of the same actors.
Yeah.
Playing different roles.
Yeah, if you imagine them like Final Fantasy games, you get the idea.
Because it's kind of similar to the Ryan Murphy series, American Horror Story, which I think there's been like 8 seasons of that now, but the FX show, and what that does, it uses like a lot of the same actors from season to season, but like it's a complete different story each time.
This is better than American Horror Story, though.
Oh well, yeah. I mean that goes without saying.
It's like I've been like deep sinking my teeth deep into it, and like I have to say, it is perfectly splendid. I've been drinking deep of the Gothic Ghost Story chalice, and I love like it is like a proper Gothic ghost story. Like I love how timeless it is in that you could put them in period costume and the script would still fit most of it, you know?
It's an adaptation, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I believe it's based on the story The Turn of the Screw.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. You learn something.
Yeah, it's an adaptation of that. And I think there's been a few previous movie adaptations of that. But yeah, this like I think it was a novella from 1898.
Yeah,
and since then it's with this show they've updated it and like changed it and added some sort of modern context to it.
Well, that just completely spoils my the little jaunt I was going to go on, because I was just going to be like, oh, well, you know, thinking about the way it's told and the characters and the setting, this could be any time period. I mean, like a piece written in the 1800s. It just so happens to be set in the late 80s. But I guess that's exactly what it is. So I don't sound clever anymore. God, wish I'd have done my research before this. But yeah. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've not watched the whole thing yet. I'm like 5 episodes in. You've seen all of it though, haven't you?
Yeah, I watched all 9 episodes back to back, no breaks.
Nice.
We were just in a trance watching it, and the Netflix thing of like just putting on the next episode. Have they gotten rid of the after 3 episodes, are you still watching? Because we didn't see that once.
I don't know, because I've not seen that for a long time. Yeah. But then again, I've not really properly binged anything for a long time. Like with this, it's been like I've been like kind of like me and Sophie have been like taking it in turns, because Sophie's watching that chess thing. What's that called? Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, I wanted to watch that.
Yeah, that's really good. Queen's Gambit or Sexy Chess. as it's also known.
Isn't that just default chess?
Well, I don't know. Is chess sexy? Can chess be sexy? I think this Netflix show like has tried to make chess sexy, but we'll see. Yeah, from what I've seen of that, it's actually very good. So I think you'd enjoy that, Leon. But yeah, this is what Sophie's watching. She was watching the chess thing, and I've been watching The Haunting of Bly Manor, because Sophie doesn't like ghost stories. So
That's fair. That's fair.
yeah, yeah.
But you're enjoying it so far, without like spoilers or anything. What about this season's working for you?
What about this is working for me?
Yeah.
The weird dollhouse. Like I've got this thing about wanting to know more about the dollhouse and wanting to know more about the dolls and how all of that works. Because
Okay.
that for me is working for me so hard. Like
Hmm.
that dollhouse stuff, like, and the little dolls, and the little dolls corresponding to actual characters and people and such, like that's working for me. The I quite like the setting works for me actually, and the characters in this. I think I like the cast more in this than I did in Hill House. I think the people in this, the characters themselves, I have more of an affinity to them than I did to the ones in Hill House. I'm not sure why.
I guess because with the first season, I'll call it, or the first miniseries, whatever you want to call it, it was mostly like a family over like different time periods, and
Yeah.
with Bly Manor, it's sort of like a maid family, where it's
Yeah.
a group of adults mostly interacting with this house, and I think that
Yeah.
might make it easier to identify with.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think it's just like, yeah, something like that. Maybe it's the fact that these are just like the people are just the characters are just more likable people.
Hmm.
I don't know, like I don't find them as um because I mean, like some of the people in some of the kids in the Hill House series, when they grew up to be adults, they weren't really the greatest people of all time, were they?
But that's like
Like,
it is the point. But yeah, I get what
yeah,
you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, they were like, and I think with this, they were like they weren't nice people, like, but with this, I could see myself being friends with these people, these adults. Yeah, I mean, the kids are creepy. The kids scare the hell out of me, but
Also, this one is
yeah,
like set in England,
yeah.
and they're like speaking our language.
Well, yeah, eating shepherd's pie and things. Yeah, exactly. Why is it always shepherd's pie? Why is that? Is that the only thing that they that they know? Is that, or is that the only thing that we have? Do I feel like there's more English recipes, but actually there's only shepherd's pie that's a true English recipe, or what? Like, why is it always shepherd's pie, Leon?
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's just
Is it the most
feels.
alien thing? Is
Yeah,
it
I
like,
think if you're American, it feels super English. Maybe.
yeah. Is I can't believe nobody else nobody else in the world has ever put mashed potato on top of mince and gravy. Like, I can't believe
But
England's the only place that's ever done that.
well, the
Like,
thing is, they probably have, and it's called something different, and it
or
tastes way
Britain,
better.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed the season. I thought
Yeah.
it was I thought it was a good telling of a story of this type, and the like twists and turns it takes are I think they really fit the like theming of the story,
Mm.
and it differentiates itself quite a bit from from Hill House, and I think that's done more so in this sort of scare factor, because I think
Yeah.
this Bly Manor focuses more on the creep and dread aspect, and the mythology, whereas Hill House did have a lot more scares,
Mm.
but that they I feel like they both nail what they're trying to do. and
Exactly.
yeah, I really like the characters in season 2, and I've got like criticisms, mild criticisms, which are hard to speak about without spoilers. But I think ultimately I kind of prefer the story of season or like Hill House, because in my eyes it did more unexpected things
Mm.
for me. And then I think Bly Manor is really good at telling its particular story and remaining consistent with that.
Yeah.
So like I don't mind too much with like I prefer like atmospheric dread and a building sense of horror over like scares. So I'm cool with
Mm.
that. Though I did feel that I was blindsided quite a bit in season 1 by
Yeah.
developments that happened, which didn't really happen to me as much in season 2. And I don't know if that's compounded by the fact that I watched it all in one go, or just because maybe that's what I was expecting, and
Yeah.
Flanagan and his crew and his team were going for something else. But all in all, I had a really good time with it, and I recommend it. And I'm curious, looking forward to you finishing it and having
Yeah.
a chat.
I will see it through to the end. The main thing like between this and Hill House for me, I think, is like like you were saying, like Hill House is more like I was getting at actually, and the fact that it is an adaptation of a 1800s novel, which makes sense then, I guess, because Hill House felt very modern, like a very modern ghost story, what we've come to expect from ghost stories when we go to the cinema to watch horror movies and things like that. It had a lot of that kind of ambience and like theming and everything else. It had
Yeah,
that modern core to it, whereas this is something older, more gothic, more
classical for
slower,
some
the slow
ways.
burn. Yeah, to get musical, this is doom metal or funeral doom, and Hill House is yeah. So this is funeral. Bly Manor is funeral doom, and Hill House is probably just like closer to I would say standard doom. What I call standard doom, where it's like a little bit, it's got more of a it's not as slow, it's not as trudging, it's not like pallbearers carrying a coffin down an aisle, which is which is what I get from Bly Manor, if that makes sense to anybody but me.
Yeah, this metaphor is so niche. It's
Yeah.
like 10 people,
Yeah, exactly.
and only one
But
of
yeah.
them is listening to this podcast.
Yeah. The one guy who listens, who shares my musical taste. But yeah, there we go. That's how I feel about it and how I think about it. Other than that, like I've just been like diving into all the seasonal specials. So
Okay.
many great Halloween books this year. Like there's this Madam Satan one shot which I thoroughly enjoyed. Madam Satan of Sabrina fame. Which I am going to attempt to recreate Madam Satan's face on a pumpkin later on this week. So I bought myself some pumpkin carving tools ready for some unnecessary surgery that I'm going to perform on some unsuspecting orange gourds. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm going to try and do. I've been looking at videos of people that do full on carving. So this is either going to go very wrong or it's going to work very well. But I'm going to try and do a full on carving. I decided. So we'll see how that works out.
Apart from Madam Satan, do you have others planned?
Pumpkin wise, there's Madam Satan, and then like I've got this white pumpkin. I picked there's something called a ghost pumpkin that they sell at Morrison's, and it's like a pumpkin but it's white. And I was going to try and do a skull on that, or do a skull out of that. I've got some. I've just been like floating stuff in my head, so I've not really got anything properly planned yet. One of them's going to be a normal jack-o'-lantern face because there always has to be. But I've not worked out exactly what I'm going to do with the others yet, but I'm probably going to try something cool. We'll see. But yeah, this Madam Satan book. So Madam Satan is the queen of hell, and she's bored of it because it's demanding, and the denizens of hell, the lords of the infernal lands, are whiny and annoying with their petty little feuds, and it's a fun demonic romp. The art's pretty great, and it's gorgeously dark and grotesque in design. It's a satanic feast for the eyes, and it's great for an October evening. So I'd recommend picking that up for a seasonal special. It's cool. The other thing I've been doing is I've been trudging my way through Marvel's Werewolf by Night. This is the classic one from the 70s, which are awesome as heck, alongside the new number one, which recently hit the shelves, which wasn't so impressed by it. It's okay, but it feels like there was something missing from it. I can so much potential in it, in the story, in the way that they've, like, the characters that they've put in there, like what they've chosen to do with it, and everything else has all the potential in the world. But I just feel like it's missing something. I don't know what it's missing, but it's missing something. Like, it doesn't have I just feel a little bit two-dimensional, maybe. I don't know. There's just something missing from it that's not there that it needs, that would like bump sauce. It up. Yeah, the special sauce. Yeah, it, like the special ingredient. Yeah. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's definitely something missing from it. Maybe I'll be in a better position to talk about what's missing from it in a couple episodes' time or something. I don't know. But in a future episode, I'm definitely going to go into a rant/tirade about the classic Werewolf by Night books. And I'll probably talk about this other one as well. I did check out Rorschach #1. I don't know if you did.
No, I have not. I was waiting on what you had to say about it.
Checked it out. Nothing I want to write home about, really, to be honest. It's a great setup, and it's a cool detective story, and in true Tom King fashion, he does knock it out of the park. But I just don't think we need another story in the Watchmen universe. And I feel like what he's done, like the effort that he's put into this, and like what he's set up here with this like detective story and what he's doing, like I feel like it could have been better served by not being about Watchmen. Like, he could have done this and he wouldn't have had to put it in the Watchmen universe, and he wouldn't have had to feature Rorschach, and it would have been an equally great story.
Yeah, it's when you get things like these, it really does feel like an exec was like, we need a Watchmen story, a Rorschach story, and then they gave it to King, who maybe had a interesting tale to tell, and was able to like transplant it on that. Whereas like that feels like pure marketing. Whereas had it just been like, here is Tom King's mini series about a very similar type of character, it could have been more fruitful. But I guess we'll see what happens. Like, this time in 6 months, people might be hailing it as a modern classic.
Yeah, I feel like it could have been more had it not had the Watchmen attached to it.
Yeah,
and it could have been something super original. I mean, it is super original in like it's a detective story, like a full on coming across like a pure detective tale so far after issue 1. But I think it's been tainted by the fact that it's got the Watchmen stuff attached to it. And I think it could have done better by not having that attached to it. And if they'd just if Tom King had taken this story and just gone wild with it and not included, like just written what he wanted to write and done what he wanted to do without including the Watchmen universe, I think it could have been so much better. Anyway, that kind of wraps me up for everything I've been doing over the past 2 weeks. I don't know if you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll add just a little bit. That it's less comic based, but I been watching a bunch of movies over the last 2 weeks. A lot of rewatches, but I also watched a few things I hadn't checked out before, like and to keep in the spooky spirit, one of them, which is thematically relevant, is Doctor Sleep, which is the Mike Flanagan, again, of Hill House fame and Bly Manor fame. He adapted the King sequel to The Shining, and the book of Doctor Sleep is a sequel to the book. And famously, King was never a fan of Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining. But what the film manages to do is be both a sequel to the book, but also a sequel to the film. So it's juggling a lot, and I think at the end of it, I enjoyed the movie, but it's one of those movies where it didn't get reviewed well at the time and didn't do particularly well, and it was quite long. It was like, I think it was over 2.5 hours, the theatrical, and the version I watched is the director's cut, which is 3 hours on the dot, which is quite long for a horror movie. Like, almost feels like it would have been better served as a sort of miniseries TV show. But yeah, it's one of those movies. So it didn't get a lot of love when it came out, but it's a film that a lot of people last year were saying, oh, it was slept on, and it's like a gem that people didn't pay attention to. And I was hoping that it would be that for me, but I think I fall somewhere in the middle between that, because I don't like I enjoyed my time with it, but I don't think it's a secret misunderstood classic. But it's well acted, and it's a cool story. There's a lot of things in it to like, really, and especially because it sounds like such an awful idea, regardless of it being the original author. But a sequel to The Shining, why? But I think the themes and the topics that it tackles and how it uses its new and old characters is done very effectively. And a lot of my gripes are to do with things where I think it either feels like too much, like they condense too much, and also, even though I've never read the book, I can feel it. Like, I can feel that the movie is having to skim over things that would be quite interesting to delve into in terms of exploring like certain characters. And I think that the movie does suffer because of that. But ultimately, I would recommend it. It's different from what you're probably imagining. And if you've got 3 hours to spare, it is a good watch, because it doesn't feel overly long. It just feels like the parlance of our youth, where you had, say, a bunch of OVAs of an anime, and then you had the actual series, and it feels like they've condensed the series into like an OVA.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
whereas like maybe it would have been nicer if they had thrown it up on Netflix or something and made it like maybe 3 to 4 episodes or something like that, or maybe 6. But it's way better than it is better than I thought it would be from my initial feelings. But it's not the it's not the overlooked genius that some people were alluding to. But
It's not what you thought it was going to be.
Not after people's reactions to it. But it's a shame that Rahul's not here, because I think he had more warm feelings on it than me, because I think he saw it a while back, and he was pretty jazzed about it. So it's a shame he's not here so we could discuss it. But I'd recommend it, Greg. I would check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out and take a look at that. So,
did you ever watch Color Out of Space?
Yes, I did.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was really good. I actually talked about it on a previous cast a little bit.
Yeah. I've got like vague memories of it, but I can't remember.
No, I watched it and it was really good. I was really into it. But then again, like, I liked Mandy as well. So, like, these films are actually really good. Like Mandy and Color Out of Space. Like, I like both of them. They're by different directors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think I'm lumping them together just for the Nick Cage connection. But
it's kind of like Nick Cage, like decent Nick Cage roles in recent years is what probably pairs them together.
Yeah.
I think with Color Out of Space. I feel like that's a movie that has a lot of like really good, promising ideas, but I think the execution of some of it isn't as neat as it could be, especially for the type of story that it's telling. But I think there's a lot to like in there. Even if for me, there's not a lot that I left loving about it.
Yeah.
I did like how it handled a bunch of things.
I think it had a lot going for it, that film. And I was, when I watched it, I did actually think it was a real trip. I was like really into it. And I want to watch it again. I wanted to watch it a second time so I could have a proper opinion about it and talk about it properly. But I've not watched it a second time yet. So
Like it has a great look to it.
yeah, it does. It definitely does. Like the aesthetic of it is like, it's dripping with style, and like the weird purple glow they use and everything, and like the attic scene.
And yeah,
Yeah.
like the escalation of stuff is
Yeah,
really cool.
exactly. Yeah, all of it is bang on, and I actually think it's a really solid adaptation of the original story.
Yeah, I was wondering that because
Yeah,
I've never read it.
yeah. I think it's a pretty solid adaptation of the original story, so it's pretty good. Um, but yeah, I fully recommend that, and I will have to watch it a second time so I can talk about it again properly. Because like I'm trying to like dredge my mind to go back to it because it's been a few months since I watched it. To try and like get some proper opinions out, being as you just brought it up, but I can't do that right now. So, yeah, we are gonna have to watch that again though.
Yeah. And just one final thing before we move
Yeah.
on to the actual thing. It's not horror based, but it does have death in it, and that is I rewatched the first two Bill and Ted movies, and then I watched Bill and Ted Face the Music.
I've not seen that yet.
I think you would dig it.
Of course I
think
would.
you would dig it. It's one of those like latecomer sequels that kind of feels like it does exist in a way to wrap things up and also comment on, say, the legacy of the thing, but also how the world's changed since the first two movies come out. And for that, I think it's effective. There's a bunch of things in it which don't fully work for me, and also I wish, like aesthetic wise, kind of wish they'd done what like Blade Runner 2049 does, which is it carries on what the future looked like in the original Blade Runner movie. And in this movie, they do sort of jazz it up so it does look a bit like Apple-ish. Like there's a lot of white and chrome stuff in the future type stuff, and it's like, I wish they stuck with that cool grungy 80s music video look from the first two movies, especially having rewatched those movies recently. And those are two movies, especially Excellent Adventure, that when I was young, I've watched that movie dozens of times, and then and then before recently, I hadn't watched it since I was a kid, maybe teenager, oldest. So it was really nice revisiting those movies, and there's a lot to love in those movies. And I think my personal favorite is Bogus Journey of the trilogy.
Yeah, Mastodon around the. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say because Bogus Journey is like fucked up in quite an interesting way.
Mastodon are on the soundtrack for the third one.
Yeah, the soundtrack's pretty good.
Yeah. Because I checked out the soundtrack because it's all there on Spotify, and Mastodon did a single for it. I think the track's called Rufus Lives. But yeah, I'm me being the big Mastodon fan I am. So yeah, I will.
Check it out when you can.
Movie. I will. Yes. I've been meaning to get around to it because it's on Prime, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do need to get around to checking that out. So, shall we move on to the comics, Leon?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I'm going to open this up with a book that we were sent by Jude Cowan Montague, who is the writer and artist here. Now, this is a book called Love on the Isle of Dogs. And we tend to talk a lot about comics and sequential art that follow a traditional standard, as it were. follow the rules to an extent, even when we get to the more experimental end of the spectrum. We rarely dip into the super abstract side of things. And the comics and pieces of sequential art that don't necessarily follow the rules, like, so we tend to look a lot at the comics that obey convention, don't we?
Yeah, there's a certain
Yeah.
formalism to
Yeah.
a lot of them.
This doesn't obey convention in that respect. It is still sequential art. It's a stunning piece of sequential art, at once a graphic memoir and a prose story. This book encapsulates both, and it's a book that meditates on love and psychosis and the effect of mental illness can have on the people close to the sufferer. And the way through the suffering of her husband, because this is like this is autobiographical. So through the suffering of her then husband, she was able to learn about love and learn about, like, the way that she interacted with her husband during his suffering and everything else, and all the terrible things that happened as part of this story. She was able to learn about love and learn about herself a little bit as well, maybe. And there's an awful lot to unpack here, actually. There's a lot of stuff in here that resonates with me, actually, which I'll come to in a moment. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give you the blurb. So the blurb here, what we've got here is Love on the Isle of Dogs is both a graphic novel and a literary novel. First, it's told in pictures and then in text, two different versions of the story which shed light on the others. It's a true story set against the backdrop of the Isle of Dogs in the 1990s, while construction of the Docklands led by Canary Wharf was going up. And it's about her marriage and about her love to this man, and how that broke down over time, and his psychosis and everything else, and how that had an effect on everything, and how his mental illness had an effect on his surroundings, on the world around him, and how that affected her, and how she was able to come out of this, basically. Now, the things that this kind of like touches on, because it touches on kind of like, for me, it kind of brings back memories of conversations that my mother would have on the phone to my grandmother and things, and other people, care organizations, whatever, in reference to my aunt and her mental health, because she suffered from and she suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. She's still on heavy medication and things like that, and she has been for years, like decades, a couple of decades now. And it's the way, like, because I remember, like, because I was a child when all of this was happening, but I remember like snippets of conversations that my mum would have about how that they were stripping back the funding of mental health in the UK at this time, and the lack of support for mentally ill people in the UK, because they were closing all these services and changing the funding and everything else. And this is going back to, for me, this would have been like the mid to late 90s kind of time. But this is obviously, this book is set closer to the beginning of the 90s, in the early 90s, but obviously this was going on for the entire decade. So we're talking about like the deinstitutionalization of care, and the deinstitutionalization and care in the community and everything that came out of that. So kind of like the lack of funding for mental health services and care in the community, ultimately being a euphemism for fend for yourself, if you think about it that way. Like, unless you had family or people that cared for you, there was no way you were going to get out of this, and you were kind of like in and out of hospital, because hospital was seen as a short-term thing, and the care that they would provide would be enough, but that to get you back out. But then you could relapse and you could end up back in because it's not. There's no support there once you're outside of the hospital. It's just you are kind of like and the support that is there is very sparse. And you kind of have to navigate all of that yourself.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the dire situations to do with like criminal justice, where like there's no path for people once they're out of prison to gain any guidance or help once they leave, so they end up back in no time. And it sounds like the healthcare version of that, where there being no support structure, just leaves people.
I mean, and what you end up with people that, you know, have mental illness that, although you care deeply about them, and you care, you know, you care deeply and you want to support them and help them, their mental illness can make them dangerous sometimes. And they can be dangerous for you to be around if they end up having an episode and they get violent or something like that. It's dangerous for you to be there, and it's ultimately not a great situation because you're having people that aren't the people that aren't trained to deal with this kind of stuff, people that aren't they have no they have a very limited understanding of what this person's like this person's particular issue is, and they are with that person and they can't do a lot to help, and it kind of puts, it's not a good place for people to be in. It's kind of like it puts vulnerable people in dangerous situations. These mentally ill people can be dangerous to themselves, and this is what kind of like, this is what stood out to me because it made me think of my aunt's story, you know. And that's what this book kind of brought up in my mind, front and center. So yeah, like my mum and my aunt, and the way my mum had to kind of like navigate all of this for my aunt to basically like everything that my aunt has had, like where she's been staying in particular like accommodation schemes and things like that. My mum's had to kind of like had a little like a mini battle to get her there kind of thing. And it's all of that kind of stuff. So it's like how no one's got any training around these issues, and how do you look after and manage someone with such severe mental illness, you know? And like how it must have been for them, the snippets of conversation that I heard and everything else, the letters I saw my mum type up, the phone conversations, trying to get my aunt to a safe place to get her the care she needed. And it's like, it's how I guess people do fall through the net as well. It made me think about that as well. But I mean, it's a beautiful story in this book, and it has it's sad. It is, as the author herself puts it, a tearjerker on her website. But it's a beautiful story, and it's told in a beautiful abstract ink wash that kind of like flows over the page. And these pages are, for me, more of a representation of feeling than form. So the ink thickens and gathers like storm clouds in pages where there is more anger or fear, maybe. And there's light usage and fewer strokes with more white space when things are calmer, happier, maybe. Form becomes sharper and more erratic when things take a turn or things escalate, like where there's ferocity and aggression. And then things are softer and more composed when things are calmer and safer. And in this way, it's almost for me like it's like looking at a musical composition. So when you look at waveforms, how it gets more erratic when the music gets louder or swells to a crescendo or whatever. And the text portion that follows this is very poetic, and it kind of like lends. So you can read the art, but then the text lends the. It lends to the art in that it fills in the spaces between the art, and they work together in tandem to kind of like hold each other up, kind of thing. And the text gives you a vessel in which you can collect the feelings and in the art that precedes it. Like, you can bottle this in the text afterwards, so you have this kind of like this wash of feelings and like different intense moments across these art pages, and then afterwards you get like these are like liquid, and then afterwards you get the bottle, which is formed by the poem, the text portion, that you can collect it all in this poetic prose that comes towards the end of the book, which is really beautiful. And yeah, I think it's a really beautiful story, and it's something that needs to be told and people should read, because it's an important story, I think, in some ways as well, because of what it illustrates. As much as it is Jude Cowan's kind of like personal story and personal story of how, you know, her marriage ultimately fell apart in the 90s with the backdrop of this kind of like the building work that was going on the Isle of Dogs and everything else, and how the relationship to all of that and how all of that came around. It's an important story that kind of chronicles what it's like to have someone close to you suffering from such severe mental health issues, and what that must feel like and what that must be like, and the situations that puts you in, and, you know, like the often really awful situations that puts you in, and the really dangerous situations that can put you in being left to deal with that, and for that person to be, you know, to go home, and then you're having that person, as much as you love that person, and as much as you want to care for that person, and as much as you want to help that person, how difficult that must be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's something I would recommend, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds really good, and
it
I
is. It's
definitely
very
want to
good.
check it out.
Very, very good. Yeah, it's great, and it's well worth your time. So that is this the whole thing is by Jude Cowan Montague, and that is on sale now. You can find that now, so I would check that out, because it is well worth your time. That is Love on the Isle of Dogs. Leon, you've got something to talk about?
I do. So I was interested in sort of shorter run books that were like semi-recent, because I feel like, especially this year compared to other years, a lot of stuff has been slipping by the radar, and there was like a small amount of things which seemed to keep going during all the different lockdowns, and comics managed to be, like music, one of the ones that continued to a degree. And once the shops were unable to open, then you had that pause. So there's a lot of stuff which started coming out during the summer that could pass me by. So I wanted to check them out and see what was out there. So I came across one story, and this is an Image comic called Bliss. And I read the first issue, and the story is done by Sean Lewis, and the art is done by Caitlin Yarsky. And the like high level version of what this story is about is like we start with a guy who is defending his father for an unknown crime, and the way that the judicial people, but it kind of almost reads like a great chamber or some sort of like circus court or something. Like, there's so many people there, but this guy is sort of defending his father's honor, and the prosecutor or judge or whatever is making it sound like what his father did is worse than like serial killers and all types of stuff. And we're left wondering what happened. And what we find during the course of this first issue is that there's a connection between the protagonist's father and this drug called Bliss that in the current timeline has ravaged the city that they are located in. I believe it's called Feral City. And
Feral.
the way, yeah, and the way Bliss works is that it wipes away memories, and it's basically like sort of devastating the city. And on Image's own site, I think they refer to it as Breaking Bad meets Sandman in urban fantasy. And yeah, that's not far off the mark because there's not really much Breaking Bad in issue 1, but it does definitely feel like it's going in that way because through the memories or the flashbacks, the protagonist's parents were kicked out by the protagonist's mother's father because they got pregnant and they got kicked out of the house. The father-in-law even shot the dad in the shoulder, and they basically had to go to the Feral City and make it on their own. And they obviously had a kid, but then the kid gets really, really sick and is in hospital. So the parents need money and they need a way to try and feed their kid, but also get their kid healed up. And obviously healthcare seems really bad there. And what we get in the first issue is the different lengths that the father is willing to do to just help his kid. So starting off, he always tries to get his kid, like he's visiting his kid in hospital, he always tries to get him an orange, just an orange. But even that is a hassle, and he ends up having to get beaten up just to get his hands on an orange. So like things are super dire. But then what happens is, I don't want to go too much detail, especially because it's only meant to be an 8-issue run. But basically these people or beings offer him a lifeline when he stumbles down the wrong alley one night. And they basically give him the option to push some Bliss out, get some people on the Bliss, and they'll give him cash to look after his family, and they give him a big, like, nice upfront stack of cash that he's able to get his kid the best healthcare, and that it all seems like it's working. It's like he's just peddling the drugs just to help everyone, but just to help his family. He's just trying to make his way. But we see sort of snippets and allusions to how this is all going to go downhill, and his dad's legacy, but also his are going to be fraught, and it's not going to be an easy time. And yeah, this is a book where I think it really gets to what it's trying to do at the beginning really quickly without properly giving you it keeps the mystery intact while also sort of pushing you down the road. And there's a lot of not cultural, but kind of just shortcuts because you've seen similar elements of this story before, but then this takes a bit more of a fantasy take in a while, and or even magical realist take. But yeah, I had a good time reading this. I think that the look of the book is nice and clean, and there's a lot of cool panel structures, especially when the protagonist's father meets these beings, I'll say, and makes this deal with the devil. There's a lot of cool use of just different types of panel structure and like symmetry in a nice way, and the way the feral city is composed, it 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 feels like this like metropolis where a big percentage of people under the line are just being forgotten. Like there's a shot which shows like a intersection um, that is going up a hill, and like there are apartments stacked on apartments stacked on apartments, like different build types. It just feels like there are tens of millions of people in this city, and so many people being like forgotten or like washed away. And yeah, it does have such a, you can feel like this overbearing, almost hopeless sense with this young couple just trying to survive and trying to look after their sick kid. And you can understand the desperation that gets the character's father uh, into the position that leads to the this big framing device of the court. But I wonder if it's what we don't know at the moment. I wonder if it's some sort of if either it's this world's version of like a people's court, which it looks like in some way, or if it's a bit more fantastical and theatrical and they deal with things in a different way. But it does tease bits about the future, and I think that the story is quite solid, and it does seem quite Faustian in ways, and that's always quite enjoyable. But yeah, I like the look of the book. I like the design of the characters, and I like the composition of a lot of the pages. There's just a nice look to it. I always love a thing where I have to as I'm reading, I'm like, does it follow this way, or are they following this way? And it's, I know, I think some people might dislike that, but I always like when panel structure and the use of like speech bubbles are done in a way that is non-standard and is not just a gimmick, but done to elevate the story that's being told in that. So far so good for me for issue 1, and this being like a 1 of 8. I think 4 to 5 issues are out so far. I think the 4th issue comes out at the end of the month. But yeah, because it's quite short, I'm gonna sort of catch up with this one and see where it goes, because it does. The thing that enticed me to it is that I saw the cover of issue 4, like a preview for it, and I was like, "What's this about?" Like, because issue 1, the cover, like, it's of the dad, and he kind of looks like Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame. But yeah, each of the covers are very different, and it was the 4, which has like a person on there who sort of looks like they're sort of floating in a haze in a way, and I thought, like, what is this about? Is it like the typeface looks kind of magic-y? So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it's worth checking out if you want something a bit different, and if you want something that's going to be like a nice contained story that's going to have a beginning, middle, and end.
Nice. There's another one that you've just reminded me of actually when you were talking about this whole idea of drugs playing with memories. This is a slightly different formula, because what this is, drugs made from people's bones that lets you experience other people's memories, or lets you experience the lives of these dead people. So it lets you step into their skin for the duration of the trip. It's a cocaine style drug called Ash, and the book I'm talking about is a book called Bone Parish. which
Oh
is
yes, I
Cullen
do
Bunn.
remember.
Yeah,
You speaking about this
yeah.
many moons ago
Oh yeah, ages ago. But
when
I'm
we were in like the 20s or something back
a
then.
good 2 years ago. But you should check that one out as well, Leon, if you get round to it.
Yeah, I
That's
think I've got a
yeah,
couple of those issues digitally.
yeah.
It
It's
ended
worth your
up,
time.
yeah, it ended up, and this is something that we've lamented before on this cast. Sometimes with reading like new issues of stuff, sometimes you'll get like 3 to 4 issues in, and then because you're reading other stuff, blah, 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 you sort of fall behind, and more issues come out, and you're like, oh, I really should get back onto X. And there's a lot of comics from our first, uh, first year or first 2 years that I would I want to revisit because I didn't finish them. So that might be a mini project of mine. Close the loops.
Yeah. I feel that you would enjoy Bone Parish. Because it has a lot of like the similar thing going on with the drugs and like weird drugs doing weird things to people. So yeah, it's worth your time. Bone Parish is a great one. But yeah, I mean that Bliss sounds good. It's one of those things where it's like I've got you seem to be like a pro at picking the things that are on my list that I haven't got around to yet.
Yeah, I think it's just a thing where
Yeah.
both your pull list and your mental pull list that you don't talk about. I think I've got like a psychic link into there, and I'm just good at
Yeah.
picking comics that you'd like.
I mean, when I do the pull list on these episodes, I don't put everything on here that I'm going to buy anyway.
Yeah.
Like, because
I'm still reading your mind.
yeah,
But I think just at this point of doing this podcast for a while, and obviously being
yeah,
friends for much longer, I think there is just a thing because like you seem to like usually if you say, oh, I think you'll like this one, Leon, I usually fall in love with it. So I think we just got that wavelength.
we're on that level. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We're on that level where we can like fully recommend stuff perfectly because we know, and like that's yeah. I mean, like you. I mean, like I'm sure like other people get a good idea of my taste from listening to me talk on here as well, and vice versa. So yeah. Are we moving on to the last one on the list then, which is
Yeah,
a
let's do it.
preview? Yeah, I mean, like, so we got sent a full-on OGN from from Image Comics, which kind of like took me by surprise because I was like, "Whoa, okay." So we got a preview copy of Blue and Green, which is an OGN published by Image Comics. That's OGN, original graphic novel. Now this is the kind of like creation of Ramvi on writing duties. We've got Anand Radhakrishnan is the artist, Aditya Bidikar on letters, John J. Pearson on colours, and we've got design by Tom Muller, and this is published by Image Comics. Now,
And this is a good squad. This is like
yeah,
good squad.
this is like A team, man. This book is like, and you can tell, like, this book is dripping with cool. So we were graciously treated to this review copy, which is perfect for this season as well. So this is going to be the kind of thing you want to be reading around now, and it comes out on October 28th. So that's going to be tomorrow because you'll be listening to this today, which will be the 27th. So I suggest you get to your comic store and pick it up tomorrow because it's a doozy, and it's like 100% like you need this because this is great. So I'm gonna just say what Ramvi says in the email that he sent, because he like the email that he sent out to his mailing list, which had this PDF attached. So we set out to make something that was unique in its aesthetic and attempted to capture a jazz tune in its visuals while telling an affecting story about obsession, ambition, elation, and heartbreak. I hope you all enjoy it. And I feel like this creative team have managed to nail all of those things. And there's more included in that as well. So I give you the blurb from the image site for this one. The dark and haunting so this is Blue and Green, which is the dark and haunting portrayal of a young musician's pursuit of creative genius. The monstrous nature which threatens to consume him as it did his predecessor half a century ago. This is from creators Ram V of Graffiti's Wall and These Savage Shores, and Anand R.K. of Graffiti's Wall. And Blue and Green is an exploration of ambitions, expectations, and the horrific depths of their spiraling pursuit. Which I think sums it up quite nicely. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's the good entry point of knowledge going into this book.
Exactly. So straight up, this book is named after a famous Miles Davis jazz composition. And if you've ever heard Blue and Green, have you ever listened to it?
I have, but I definitely have, but don't ask me to sing it.
No, I'm not going to ask you to hum it. But I think that this book has sort of like captured the mood of Blue and Green as a musical piece, actually, quite well. It actually feels like the music to me in places, which I think is wonderful. Like you can hear the jazz musicianship coming off the page when you read it. And it's always truly special when comics and sequential art manage to strike such a balance and tap into something like this. So when comics and music kind of synergize on that level, there's something I'm really into. Like I've talked about this before with the Bowie book. When I talked about the Allred Bowie book, which I can't remember the full title of right now, which is a real shame, especially on me. But no, it like where music and art synergize like that. I'm a big fan of that kind of mood. And like the balance that this struck, and I was vibing with that hard. So I was into this. I was into this kind of like this. I was in this sea of jazz musicianship, and like I was sitting there. I could just like cigarette smoke and like saxophone,
Yeah, like there's like a haze.
Yeah. And the art actually is that haze. It's great. So the book like kind of brings to mind a book we've discussed previously that has similar themes as well. A music-centric horror story, Underwinter, which kind of to an extent also deals with obsession and compulsion. I will not talk too much about Underwinter now because we've already spoken about it on a previous cast. You should go back and check that out. Also go check out Underwinter because it's fantastic. So yeah, for me, this book explores the endless search for perfection and completion as an artist, which is applicable to any artistic endeavor in any discipline, I feel. Am I right?
Yeah.
I think you can apply this particular brand of obsession and like the need to be better and the compulsion to be better, like this obsessive compulsiveness to carry on playing, to keep doing it, like draw till your fingers bleed or play till your fingers bleed or sing till your throat hurts because you've got to get better. It's that kind of like that drive and that push. There was a film that I never actually got to catch, but I've seen like trailers for it and things like that. It's the one with the guy who is
Whiplash?
That's it, Whiplash, yes. How did you know I was thinking of Whiplash?
Because I was thinking it was a comparison I was going to use, and then when you started talking, I was like, he's definitely talking about Whiplash. And I was going to wait until you'd said one of the actors, and I thought, no, I'm going to jump in now.
Yeah. Now you've seen Whiplash and I haven't, so I'll let you talk about that bit. But yeah, so I mean, like, what were your kind of like thoughts about this?
Well, I think that as well as like the big focus on, say, obsession, there's quite a thing to do with like a level of unrequitedness, and a level of like regret and like how quickly time passes, and a lot to do with feelings and the unsaid, because with Eric, the lead, it is Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Eric, the lead, like the book starts, and I'm not going to go too hard into plot details, but the book starts with him coming home for a funeral, and as he spends time in like the old house that he grew up with and seemingly escape, quote unquote, there's a lot of like ghosts there, and I mean that in the sort of memory sense and like trauma sense, but there's also, because he's this gifted musician, and he's now currently like a teacher, and like a lot of the beginning of the book focuses on him trying to like deal with everything, and there's like a wave of numbness over him to do with like the events that have caused him to come home, but also this feeling of sort of walking through dead memories, and this hollowness to do with what the like expectations were, or like at least hopes and dreams, and what the his reality is. And I think it's really, the book is really good in those parts where we spend time with this guy. Like there's a lot in with this character that I can empathize with, and despite the fact that I am no musical being really, there's a lot of, and I think this is a thing where the writing and the art come together so well, because like a lot of the art does have this sort of dreamlike haze over it, almost like half forgotten memories. But it like the way the line work is done, and complemented with the color, there's so much detail, especially with like faces or like rooms. But then at the same time, there can be like a flurry of lines and color, and the image you're getting is almost abstract in some ways, especially for people in the panel who aren't the focus of the panel. And yeah, it does have this sort of like underwater feeling, like when your ears pop after going on an airplane and you're not quite in life yet. And it does have that. And as we go through the book, other elements become clearer as we go through, and the sort of disembodied voices end up becoming like embodied in a way that I quite enjoy.
As you go through the book, you actually get to see memories form. So you get what is at the beginning he considers a complete memory, and then as you go through the book, that memory actually becomes more complete and begins to form as you go through the book, which is a cool thing to do. Like in each chapter, a different bit is added to that memory. And that is like a cool kind of like a cool story device, I thought, actually, in a nice way to pass out information, which I thought that was like quite interesting how that works. But yeah, I mean, like, so it's also a meditation on how pain and trauma can be channeled into art, and like the white whale that is perfection, constantly just out of reach, like never good enough, always just below the bar, and the bar's ever moving. It's akin to it's a madness that lies within, and within that the way that it manifests, like some kind of like we'll say demonic muse that pushes you and forces you to make the worst choices. It's like an intrusive thought made flesh that pushes you towards your compulsion, forces you to feed it, and kind of like steers you into the worst choices in service of your art, and kind of like compels you to continue to the detriment of your very body and soul almost. It's like a drug. It's like it'd be like being a drug addict almost, I assume.
Yeah, that's the element that that you alluded to before,
Yeah.
Whiplash, where
Yeah.
that movie, which I highly recommend, like highly recommend. If it's on Netflix, just watch it tonight or tomorrow night. But like, that movie is about a high level of toxic perfection chasing and the almost Faustian deal or connection between student and teacher, and basically the only goal is to be great. The only goal is perfection, and nothing else in this character's life matters. So they're so hyper focused on this particular thing, the rest of their life sort of falls away, and their body and mind and soul are put through the ringer, but all to try and gain this perfection.
But it's also, it's like it's steering you into the trauma because the trauma feeds the art.
Well, yeah, this is where like,
Yeah.
the book is going for something different and
Yeah.
focusing on a different element of that type of drive, because this story is a lot more focused on legacy and how the past affects the present, and how you sort of carry a lot of the past with you, even if you don't fully comprehend it.
Mm. Yeah. It is like, I feel this is, it's like a really excellent psychological horror tale, and it is a thriller that it goes down this dark spiral, and it does it with like such beautiful, delicate, haunting artwork, like the painted quality, these like beautiful fine lines and macabre details, like the ethereal quality of it, like kind of blurs as well what is real and what appears to be memory or delusion.
Yeah.
So I know you said the whole thing feels like you're underwater, like it's a memory, but it actually it feels disconnected, but also it blurs what is genuine memory and what is and what, you know, like what is memory, what is delusion, and what is actually happening. And you end up in this kind of like this tank, as it were, kind of like swimming in this and not able to differentiate between what's real and what's not, almost like the protagonist.
But it's never really dour and depressing.
No.
It's it's always, for lack of a better word, like colourful in more ways than one. Obviously, like book-wise, like it's gorgeous and it has all the stuff that listeners know that I love of an image book. But also, just the different shades to the story and the different emotions, and even the capturing of certain minutia, which can sometimes be hard to ascribe like a term or meaning to, like one panel which happens earlier on. The Eric he's at a sort of bar venue, plays music, and like a band has been auditioning, and he's speaking to the person who auditions the bands. And then after the audition, they're all sitting around and having a conversation, and he says something that I've experienced so many times so perfectly, where he says, I want to reach out and touch the glow of this conversation, if only for a moment, but I'm a stranger to it. And it's like, I definitely been in that situation where the things happening around you, and you want to sort of drink it in and be part of that energy, but you're just a spectator to it, really, and you're just sitting there absorbing what you can and interjecting when you can, but really you're not an active participant in this interesting and cool conversation.
Exactly. And like I think one of the real things of this for me, the thing that stuck with me, is like how it has like this particular cadence to it. So the book has this like familiar rhythm, and the way the rhythm plays through the book and the story that it's telling with like this this compulsion kind of thing. This demonic music. It's like the rhythm that we see when we look at the lives of some of the greatest artists, musical or otherwise, like the harmonies of tragedy, as it were, like played out through this book. Like that's kind of like where it kind of like spoke to me as well in that way. Like this is what drives people off the cliff kind of thing. Maybe I don't know, like a meditation on that, on like how.
Yeah, no, I definitely,
Yeah.
I can definitely see that in there.
Yeah. And I just really enjoyed it start to finish. I thought it was brilliant, and I like I've never been one to sit and listen to jazz too often, but I think this book actually gave me a renewed appreciation for jazz in a way. So it got me going back and listening to stuff again, which is cool.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
jazz is like such a mood based like style of music, and I think it's one that there's something sort of organic to it, even to the listening of it, that I think that it's always good. I mean, unless you're like a big jazz head, and like since you grew up with jazz, and you've been listening to jazz your whole life. But I think that there's a phenomena that I noticed when I was in my 20s about people I knew who were in their 30s who were all sort of like almost became a cliche of like dudes in their 30s like rediscovering or discovering jazz and stuff like that. And I obviously like an element of it was like at the time the whole hipster thing, but I think there's an actual real thing to it where I think after like decades of listening to what you've been listening to, and this is the you in the general,
Yeah.
I think the reason why jazz has stayed relevant and evolved throughout the decades, but to the degree that the older recordings are still gospel, is that it as a form of like expression, it I don't know, it seems quite pure. And I'm not trying to sound like some music writer because I don't know anyway how to talk about music, and I don't I know even despite I'm someone who's like really into my music as you are, I'm even less like au fait with my like micro genres and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my like observation of why jazz probably becomes relevant again if you've not been with it the whole time, when you hit your 30s. I think there's just a thing about it where you're like people seem to be looking, or like in the right headspace or like mood space to have a form of like music that feels like pure creation. It's hard to talk about, as you can tell from me bumbling over it.
I think what it is as well, it may come down to something slightly simpler than that, to a fact that
very likely.
Like in the way this book shows, in the way that this book kind of like pulls open the rib cage of and lays bare across the pages. Like jazz is a musical genre where you have to, I mean, there's even a quote in the book about having to have lived it. But like having to have lived it to play it, or something along those lines, I believe. I don't want to, but it, you have to have lived a certain, maybe you have to have lived a certain amount to appreciate what is going into that music when these people are making that music, because there's a lot of feelings and a lot of energy that goes into creating, when these people create jazz. A lot of like raw emotion goes into that, and maybe you can't connect with that unless you've experienced that. And when you're in your 30s, you're at a point where you have experienced enough to start to appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely on point.
Yeah.
Because I find that with like revisiting like certain movies or like TV shows or whatever, and
Mm.
when you're in your edgy teens, it's like the emotional stuff doesn't hit you at all. And then when you're in your like mid 20s, where you're probably still a bit edgy, but you're more like the world's dumb and I understand the world better than anyone else. Like these dumb adults, how do they not understand the world?
Yeah.
You're still a bit more closed up to it, and then you get a bit older and you're more confident with like letting your emotions do their thing. Then you watch that same movie again, and you're just bawling, and you're like, "Why is this affecting me? What's going
Yep.
on?" And I
And
think that's part of the process.
exactly, yeah. And then at night you go to bed after watching that movie and you lie there awake and you're like, why did I waste all my time being an edgelord for 20 years?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, why didn't I just engage with this stuff when I was younger?
Yeah, yeah. Why didn't I be a fully formed human?
But it's all part of the process. And like with this
That's
book,
it, yeah.
I think it does speak to like a process and a sort of natural or unnatural progression, and how your wants and needs at an earlier age may not necessarily reflect your wants and needs at an older age.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Um, and I guess that wraps us up, doesn't it? For Blue and Green. So that is Blue and Green, and that is a stellar piece of work. A really, really great graphic novel, really great comic.
Yeah, I just want to add like I was saying before, I think everything does work in concert. And I think like the structure, the color, the storytelling, the pacing, all of that stuff works really well to tell this like cohesive and a solid story from beginning to end. And it is a page turner. It is not something that you're looking for routes out so you can like sort of procrastinate between quote unquote chapters or whatever. This is a thing where you're just sitting there and you're just going because you're kind of I guess you're kind of going down the spiral as well, but you're also you want to see more of this world and see how Eric and the other characters around are going to react to certain things, and you want to get more of a sense of what's real and what is not. And I think that it's just a good package, and it's always nice when we're always grateful to be in a position where we're getting like creators and publishers sending us preview copies. But it's always nice when you're sent something and it works and connects with you on such a level where you're like I would buy this again type thing. Where it's not like it's not a thing of like, oh, it's going to be hard to talk about this one, and instead it's the thing of like, how do I temper my excitement with it so that we don't sound like shills, because it generally is a really well thought out and well executed book.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, like this is genuine love for work here. It's not like it's not like we're under any kind of duress or anything when we're saying this. It's a fantastic book. It really is. And yeah, it's like you're saying, it's like, how do I temper it so that I'm not spending the entire hour and a half talking about it? It's like,
and that's the thing, like listeners to the show who've listened to previous episodes know that we, and especially like you and Rahul, were like marks for like Ramvi's work. Like he don't miss.
yeah.
And it's really nice that like he still don't miss. So it's still quite nice to get like new books, especially with all that's like going on this year. And
exactly,
like everyone's heard me lamenting issue 1 and like like my heart lives with the graphic novel, or the quote unquote graphic novel, and like it's just nice to get that and get this great story, and one that treats its characters as like people, and it's really good, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great book. You should pick it up. And I guess that brings us to an end for the reviews this episode. So what we're going to do now is we are going to run through the pull list. So pull list for October 28th, we've got Blue and Green, which is out October 28th. Check it out. We've got Batman 3 Jokers. Number 3, which is the penultimate part. Penultimate means end, right? I'm something in my mind says it means one before end.
There's something in your mind is correct. It's the one before.
So it's not penultimate then, it's the ultimate. It's the end. Yes. Batman 3 Jokers, number 3 is the ultimate part of Batman 3 Jokers. So if you've been following it, that's your end piece. Check that out. We've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin number 1, which is something I've been very excited about and I will talk about in the next episode. It's Kevin Eastman returning to Turtles, and it's a story that's been in the works for years and years and years and years, and we're all very excited about it as Turtles fans. Yes. We have the Autumnal number 2, which we've talked about the Autumnal on previous episode. Go check it out. Fantastic book. Great for this time of year. It's in the name. We've got X-Ray Robot number 3 and Giga number 1 is out October 28th as well. So make sure you check that out. That has glow in the dark covers now, which I've seen around. I've seen I've seen tweets about it. They do these glow in the dark covers for it now, like this really awesome cover set. It's an exclusive to an American comic store, which kind of saddens me slightly because it means that the shipping just makes it unviable for me.
Yeah, and I hate like store specific exclusives. Like, I hated that with like games and DVDs. Just does my head in.
Yeah, it's sad Greg time because he can't have his glow in the dark Giga cover because the shipping is just like, But yeah, no, great book. You should check it out. We talked about that. We previewed that book actually 2 episodes ago. Episode called Yakalites, episode 97, I believe. We have coming up as well. This is November 4th. So Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Hush. So more Tales from the Dark Multiverse. Remember like way back when we had Marv on to talk about Tales of the Dark Multiverse? It's more Tales of the Dark Multiverse. This time, something Batman Hush. Does Hush become Batman? Does Batman become Hush? Are bandages involved? Is there a cowl made of bandages? Yeah, I want to read it. That's all I've got to say about that one. I'm not gonna. We've got Crossover number 1, which is an interesting looking new book from Image. It looks great. We've there's been a lot of noise about that on Twitter and things. It looks like it will blow your mind, so you should check that out. Got Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood, which I feel like I've mentioned previously on this cast somewhere, or I've talked about it to someone somewhere before. Black and White Wolverine comic. Maybe I might have sent you an article about it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds interesting. I'm going to check that out. We've got Origins number 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Jennika 2 number 1. So this is Jennika getting, because the first one was such a success, we're getting another second miniseries purely devoted to Jennika, the latest turtle on the block. We have Hellstrom Marvel Tales number 1, which is an anthology book. And I'm interested to check that out. And we have Scare and Hood number 1, which is something that sounds absolutely fantastic. Read ghost hunters that are also parents that drop their kids off to school and go to the woods to hunt ghosts. Something like that. So it's like juggling being a parent and a Ghostbuster at the same time, which I'm down with. I'm going to check that out. So yeah, all of this sounds very interesting. And this will be stuff that we will talk about on subsequent episodes. So that has been Ace Comicals episode number 99. Can you believe there's 99 of these things? There's going to be 100 soon.
Yeah. Hit the right? big 100. The
big three digits. But yeah, so this is Ace Comicals 99. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com, which is kind of the hub for everything we do. You can find us on Twitter under Ace Comicals, which is where we are most active. Get in touch, shoot us a DM at us, send us an email. You can send us an email to acecomicals@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter under @Batou. That's BATTOU. Again, at me. Get involved in the conversation. If you can DM me if you're if you want to join the conversation about the comics that we've talked about here today, or if you want to suggest something for us to read and talk about, then go ahead, just tell us. If you think we ought to read it, tell us, and we'll read it, and we'll talk about it. We'll tell you what we think. Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett, and a sizable chunk of our audience is American, and I know you don't want a shepherd's pie eating limey telling you what to do, but please vote. Like, it's next week, please vote. Please.
It should be a threat. It should be please vote, or we will give you shepherd's pie. Because,
yeah. It will drop shepherd's pie in all your cities. If
you see this, that's the other thing. See, they always make shepherd's pie sound awesome. In the sound like something you want to eat in these shows when they reference shepherd's pie, but it's not.
It's all right.
It's boring, man.
It's
just
boring.
mashed potato. It's mashed potato on mince and gravy.
Yeah, and all those things are nice.
Well,
it's a low hassle
nice,
food.
But it's low hassle food. But I just don't understand the obsession with it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's beyond me. But that's the threat, guys. Like, please vote. Yeah. Please vote. Please.
Yeah, please vote. Please.
We're begging you from here in England, where we do not have the same opportunity you guys have at the moment. We won't have for quite a while. So please vote. Please.
You have a chance to change things without getting in a time machine.
Yeah.
So yeah, do it, please. But yeah, so that is Ace Comicals number 99. That is Ace Comicals, over and out.